A pleasure to meet all at last. And so, we are at it once again with the Vlog-A-Thon. But more importantly, what we have here to talk about is, specifically speaking, the likes of every year we have been through leading up to this point. Since the last time I did the Vlog-A-Thon. And if I had to go through 2025, well, much like with the last 2 years, it's going to be an affair that I'll pretty much split into 4 different parts, comprehending the 4 different quarters of the year 2025. And I feel like now would be a good time to get started on it. With the first quarter out of all 4 of which, it's kind of unfortunate for me to say though, but it unfortunately does not come up nearly as eventful as with most of the other years so far. The thing is though, a good handful of trips were put together and a few other notable things were also pieced together just as well. I got back to GWK, the first impressions, after I put a little hold on it throughout most of late 2024. But the thing is though, is that throughout late 2024 and early 2025, that was basically when I had done my initial run of the first impressions. Because after March of 2025, I would essentially take a hiatus from it, mostly because of the expense. Basically getting a hold of 1 or 2 brand new games every month was putting out at least $120 every month. And so cutting back on that was kind of essential by my part. On top of this, there was also the multitude of advertising that I had done via Google Ads, a thing that I still continue to do nowadays, in some retrospect. But the thing is that cutbacks are seemingly going to be a bit more on the common side of things. I will say though that rail fanning, as well as a trip to Louisville, Kentucky, are probably some of the big things about early 2025. Not to mention getting to return to the Mitchell Park domes, as well as a visit to a certain Harley Davidson museum. Yeah. Like I said, the trips, that factor in particular, is a pretty big strength of 2025 as a whole, but we will, of course, get to most of that stuff later on. It's not exactly fortunate for me to say here, it's just the fact that 2025, the first movie I saw was Dogman, and the first game that I had gotten, especially when you think about the first impressions, that January in particular was pretty big on its own. But to tell you the truth, all I could really muster was Dogman, the video game. Yeah. As a means to prepare myself for the movie, which came out that same month, that was basically what I did. But to tell you the truth though, with all that I've covered so far, and other things I could mention just as well, we definitely had the snow worth talking about just as well, but maybe not nearly as impressive as it was in years before. Even this year, we have had some good notable amounts of inches in terms of snow coverage. But in all seriousness, with all that said, the first quarter of 2025 just didn't exactly seem to come off as eventful as with the other years that I've established so far. The trips, in fact, were one of the biggest strengths, I will have to say, and some rail fanning, of course, is well notable here. In fact, just on January 1st alone, that's what I went ahead and did. But let's just say if I really had to pick out one big event of early 2025, it would be the purchasing of my new car. Yeah. Took a couple months with a loaner in mind, but upon getting myself a somewhat new Mazda CX-5, considering the fact that my Nissan Juke had broken down to a point where it was irreparable, had to sell it off to the Caledonia auctioning center, where a lot of broken, stolen, or sold off cars get sold off at auction. I will say that getting myself a Mazda CX-5, I had to go all the way down to Bristow, not far from Kenosha. At least we got to check out a good local restaurant where I had some salmon, potatoes, and even some key lime pie. Yeah, so while all that stuff that I did in the first quarter of 2025, I still can't say it was nearly as eventful, but the business as usual was put into play with the work and life outside of work that I've had leading up to today. And it does seem that we're going to be having similar things this year just as well. But as I've said before, up until now in April 2026, I will of course have a video itself that describes how things are so far. But until all that happens, I still got 3 more vlogs that of course will cover 2025 as a whole. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.